Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Saturday broadcast here at the Virtual Spiritist Society of Baltimore, or the SSB, as we so endearingly call it. So, today, as usual, we will continue on our Saturday broadcast. And today, we have the blessing of listening to the next chapter of Leonardo Vieira presenting the book On the Way to the World of Regeneration, the following chapters. But before we begin that, we always begin our meetings by starting out with a small reading from the book Happy Life, as well as doing a opening prayer. So join me as I open randomly from this beautiful small book by Joanna DeAngelis, psychographed by the medium Divaldo Franco. And this is on page 148. Be tolerant towards your neighbor in the measure that you would expect to receive it. On today's earth, there's no one whose journey is without error, fear, and torment. These cause affliction when you are trying to do what is right, and they cause suffering when you are trying to appease, requiring understanding and tolerance. For that reason, sow tolerance today in order to reap it tomorrow. What a great reminder from Joanna to be tolerant and show compassion. With that in mind, join me in closing your eyes, giving thanks to our dear Father, Mother God, our divine Creator. Whatever name we may choose would still be our wonderful divine Creator. We thank you for this moment to be together virtually with our like-minded spiritual family and friends. We ask, dear Creator, dear mentor and spirit guides of the SSB, that you guide our presenter, Leo, this evening. May he be the vessel for the message that will be shared this evening. And may all those who are connected to us this evening receive these uplifting words. May their hearts and minds be opened, be comforted, and be enlightened. May each one of our hearts feel the warm embrace from our dear Master Jesus, his loving acceptance and encouragement. With that on our heart and in our mind, may you bless and open our meeting this evening, and so be it. Well, dear friends, without further ado, we wanted to bring Leonardo Vieira for yet again another study on the book On the Way to a World of Regeneration. Leo, we're excited about hearing today's chapter.
And so am I. hopefully, I can get everybody excited as well with these two amazing chapters that we are working on it today. Thank you, Kirsten, for the
Sure.
great opportunity to open this for us and reading the amazing message that you read from Joanna de Angelis, right? To be tolerant as we expect others to be tolerant towards us. And one thing that she said that I was really neat that you read is that doing the right thing is hard, right?
Yes, it is.
And
Yes.
causes commotion. And it's exactly what we're going to talk about it today. So
Ooh,
thank you for that.
that wasn't planned. That
Not at
wasn't
all.
planned.
Not at all. So this is a
Yeah.
great thing.
Yeah, that's
So
super cool.
thank you.
Alrighty.
So, dear friends, I'm happy to be here with you again. Sharing two other chapters of this book, a continuation of other books that we have here. I actually don't have all of them. Yeah, I do. I like to put them together like brothers and sisters. The dawn of a new era, and before that, the planetary transition as well. It's always good to put them together and show them the the amount of work that has been put together, not only to do the books. Obviously, the books, we know that they, to bring this message from the beyond to us is just it's an amazing thing. But it's also important to think about what is happening behind the scenes. When I say behind the scenes, on the other plane of life, right? The spiritual side of life, right? We tend to think that we are alone, that we are, left onto the craziness of life and whatever we may want to see it. And sometimes it does feel that way, right? And I say this because I also feel this way. And when I read and when I come in contact with this message, it's like, wow, so comforting, so nice to know that we are being watched, we are being cared for, right? With no further ado, I wanted to dive into the message because it's a lot of content. It's a lot of important information as well that I think we really need to get into it. However, as I was saying with Kirsten here, it's not by chance sometimes when we open randomly a book and Joanna de Angelis comes, and since we read Joanna de Angelis before we start our messages or meetings, and she kind of gives this amazing opening, right? To be tolerant, with others, right? As we expect to be tolerant with ourselves. Why do I say this? This book is actually on the examination, or the it's Manuel de Miranda showing what's happening in the spiritual realm during the pandemic. If we can say anything, this is going to be perhaps right after, if one may say this way, this March and April, if you will. I would say March of 2020, and I'll give you the hint why I say March 2020. It doesn't say the time, but it's important for us to kind of like just have this idea here, as well as what's happening in terms of the environment, right? In terms of doing what's right, it takes a lot of effort, personal effort and collective effort as well, in our lives to be righteous. And when I say be righteous, not that we're going to make mistakes, we will. However, to persist on the good is the other point that I would like to make before we even get to it. On this note, also would like to say, let's not judge. Let us not the receive the content, for us to point fingers or for us to say, you see, I get it. This is what's happening. This is what this is going to take us. Yes, a lot of things, if we don't watch out, it's really going to mess up our lives. It's going to create commotion in the life of others as well. However, if we can take this content and apply in our lives and pray for this, so it stop happening, these minds that are working with the young, they will be more effective because they will be able to connect with us and utilize of our energies to be ever more constructive. Okay, so let us dive into chapter 5. Thus far, as we have seen, we went through from the introduction to chapter 4. Today we'll be covering chapter 5, entitled Timely Clarifications, and chapter 6, Explanation of Events. This chapter really starts with Manuel de Miranda explaining that he had already worked with one of the workers at the Spiritist centers where they are lodged. Right, they're staying for this work in the physical realm, and then we're going to go through the explanation of who this person is and what's happening and what's her relation to all of us. Okay, so he starts by saying that the Spiritist community that now served as our enchanting lodgings was not new to me. So again, he's going back to a location where he has worked before and he has some connection with it. And you can see that this is not perhaps in a special event like it's happening here, but these spirits, they're working in the Spiritist centers with different individuals. So he says the following: I had visited several times in the past and even incorporated with a fraternal charity activities through Malvina, its dedicated incarnate medium. She had been instrumental in its creation in the last century, more than 50 years ago, as a serious and purposeful institution of continuous spiritual communion. So you see, a very important medium, a very diligent medium, working in this amazing home that she was one of the individuals who put it together, right? And then he says about her, a faithful lay Franciscan worker, she devoted herself to the creation of spiritual congregations in modern times in honor of the angelic saint of Assisi. And I'm just bringing bullet points here so we can kind of go through some of these different aspects that we would like to share with you, instead of bringing more content, because it's a lot. It's quite a bit. This chapter, in chapter 6, many of her incarnations, she reincarnated as a female. Why is this important? We'll see a little bit more. She was a French writer in the 18th century and married a duke. She saw her husband, the duke, actually being killed, and it was a very tough moment for her then. And in despair, she threw herself from the Pont Marie onto this Seine River on April 4th, 1792. Interesting enough, this is almost a week from now. It's going to be April 4th, almost 230 years ago exactly, right? And we're bringing this message here. One interest aspect as well is that Mr. Miranda also brings this date to us. It's not by chance. She could not find her husband in the spirit realm and reincarnated with some physical impairments and with remarkable mediumship of physical effects. So right after she kills herself, she goes to the spirit realm. She cannot find him, right? Perhaps due to her situation, right? Due to the shock that was created not only by seeing him being killed, but also by killing herself. She could not meet him on the other side, and she was given the opportunity to reincarnate after that with some physical impairments because of the act of killing herself, but like he said, with remarkable mediumship of physical effects. This is exactly during Kardec's time as well, that she actually, as Mr. Miranda says, she really did not care for. She did not believe in reincarnation. And she only lived for during this time that she reincarnated right after killing herself for 45 years. Only stayed in the physical body, rather. She also received other opportunities to reincarnate in humble conditions due to her spiritual achievements. She learned right after she killed herself, right after she discarnated after that reincarnation of her killing herself, about spiritism. And actually, she took courses as well in magnetic therapies as well. No wonder she started developing herself more and more and helping in spiritist institutions, or let us call more of spiritualist institutions as well. Because the only information that we have more about her in terms of working in spiritism is actually during this reincarnation where Manuel de Miranda is helping, right? So this is her situation. This is a person who unfortunately went through some tough moments there. Then she had to reincarnate to endure all these issues, right? But there is more about her, and there's more on how it connects to all of us, right? He says the following: she would encounter powerful political in the new reincarnation enemies of the past, who would persecute her with perverse defamation and suspicions, as well as opponents of the religious faith that would try to crush her with great afflictions. On the other hand, the Umbrian Poverello would extend her his personal assistance during her redemptive journey. Her existence was proceeding under the blessings of redeeming inner suffering and intense mediumistic work, and she became an example of faith and selflessness. So you see that she has this capability of very redeeming capability to do the work, to present herself, to be encouraging through work, right? But there are certain things that are happening to her that really concerned not only Manuel de Miranda, but the workers of the home as well. At the time we were starting our new task, we found her weakened and sick, diagnosed with a painful and debilitating infectious arthritis. Look at this. It's now we're analyzing how the physical aspect of that individual or condition is worrying the spiritual side of life, right? The mentors of the home, right? Concomitantly, due to the psychosphere of the planet, she was also hounded by hateful spirits trying to deter her sanctifying work. I'll say again, because of the psychosphere of the planet, she was also hounded by hateful spirits trying to deter her sanctifying work. She spent hours in the grip of severe pains, while also suffering the tormenting interference of malevolent spirit enemies of the good. Friends and members of the community were surprised to see her suffer so much, and of course, not all comments were kind, as does happen in such situations. However, resigned and optimistic, she remained faithful to her work, always encouraging others without any complaints, explaining that her sufferings were past debts, weighing on her conscience and in need of being redeemed. So, since the month of April 2004, and this is what Manuel de Miranda brings to us, and we're going to wrap up here in terms of what is going on with her. Discarnate entities, adversary of the Christ, had declared war on his name, war on Christ, threatening to remove him from the human calendar. I want to just give I want to read this last sentence here because I want to give the hint to what's to come. So we see a person that, unfortunately, like many of us, again, we're not here to judge, committed a very difficult act, right? Which is to take one's life, right? Or kill another person, whatever that is. And now she has been given the opportunity to reincarnate several times, more difficult times, more difficult conditions, humbling conditions, which is a great opportunity, as we have studied here several times, to redeem herself. And she's been doing greatly with this. She's been doing very well. However, as we again connect with the message of Joana de Angelis, whenever we try to do the right things, our friends from the past, okay, our friends who are not directly connected with us, but because we're doing the right things and that is inflicting on their job, they start to come after us. This is not for us to be afraid of anything. This is not for us to say, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and live my life and not do the right things. No, it's not that. But we need to really be conscientious of this fact in order for us to be more effective. Because as we apply ourselves in a more positive and as we apply ourselves, as we connect with the higher minds, the more we'll be able to get done together, right? And this is all over the Spiritist science. As we connect with our thoughts, with our feelings, as we pray together, we're able to do more work, more effective work as well. So now we have not only the aspect of her trying to redeem herself, but also we have the aspect of discarnate entities and the environment that is around us, making her suffer, right? Making her feel like she's nothing, make her feel that she's in pain, and she was in pain. She had, the issues of arthritis and many other things as well that is not said that may come with, right? One aspect that I would like to also bring to evidence here, we're going to say it again, we're going to touch on it again. It is exactly what's happening here in terms of her surroundings. Think of this, and this can happen very often. If you have a very devoted person at the Spiritist Center, at work or at home, but that person have a physical illness, right, or a difficulty, or that they're going through either temporarily or it's something that is chronic. And when I say it's chronic, is that it's going to be a long term, and sometimes until we discarnate. What people tend to say about these things, they tend to judge in the negative way, in a negative way, right? Or a very deplorable way per se, by always saying, is this person really sick, or is this person really in need of attention, right? Is this person really for real? What's going on? Not only that, but also those individuals, they have let themselves affect themselves, and they affect, affect the environment where as well where they live, based on those conditions, right? By saying, oh my gosh, so pity that this person, but they cannot see the effort that that person is making to be a good servant, despite the difficulties that are going through. It's much like somebody who has a backache, but they are, or a mother who has a backache, but they're holding their kid day in and day out. Much like a father who is, has, some kind of issue, but they get up every day in the morning and they go to work, right? Yes, they are complaining. Yes, they are, life is hard, but, and sometimes they cry, and sometimes, we go through this as well. And, we still do our job, right? And that's why, we need to be tolerant. And that's why the message it fits perfectly with what we're talking about today, right? The first message, the opening message. But let's give a continuation to what's going on here so we can illustrate a little bit more what we're trying to say. An unfortunate, well-organized campaign had been launched, as we were saying earlier, the spirits who are against Christ in its work. And Spiritists, considered to be the modern Christians for adhering to the consoler promised by Jesus, consisting of Spiritist teachings already revealed on the earth, would be fiercely fought. On the same token, governments with materialistic philosophies would rise, along with societies plunged in decadence, to revile and ridicule him at the lowest possible moral and social level. These spirits, they declare to be a war without boundaries or mercy. And we all saw from one moment to the next the historical and human figure of Jesus and his followers being affronted and demoted to a level typical of his antagonists. In the name of freedom of speech, an unusual persecution had been unleashed against Christianity for standing against dissipation and the destruction of the family, corruption of the youth, and defacement of an ethical moral nature, right? So we see here that there is on earth right now, established back in 2004, this is Manuel de Miranda bringing to us, that this work has been implemented by the negative forces on planet Earth to go against everything that is life, that supports life, which is this message of our Master Jesus. Again, nothing for us to be afraid of. We know that there are dark, ideals on earth since its beginnings, right? Because we have choices, but Jesus is great. The direct way to God, and he's here to help even these minds that are working against him, and we're going to see this later, right? So the work is there. So sometimes if we feel sad, if we feel distraught, or whatever you want to be called, right, that we have no energy, believe it or not, it's part of this work that is being happening, right, against us, against those who want to do the right thing. And we're not saying this because, oh, we're spiritists. It can happen also towards those who are actually helping, right? The good intended mind, good intended hearts, right? Because it is the work of Christ. Anything that is related, they're going to come against. The idea is to connect us ever more with the materialistic minds, the materialistic way of living, that we believe on nothing, that we have no scruple whatsoever dealing with one another, and attacking this institution that is the family institution, corrupting our kids through drugs or whatever it is, without any ethical morals, right? So what happens? To tackle the situation, to help with this situation, a unionistic meeting is actually called or worked on. Why I say called is because I like to believe that these spirits, these higher minds, they have a plan in place that they like to work on. So the unionistic meeting is held by Brother Gracindo, Malvina, Amalia, and other members of the group, including Mr. Miranda. Brother Gracindo, as you probably remember, is the head of the Spiritist Center in the Spirit Realm. Malvina is the person that we're talking about. Amalia, interesting also, is that She is a discarnate medium. Manuel de Miranda explains that she is actually a discarnate medium, and other members as well, as we will see that it's participating in this meeting as well. So it starts by the obsessor saying the following: "What do you want from me?" This is the mediumistic meeting as they are together in the spirit realm, and the obsessor comes and talks with the what's her name again? I forget now. Sorry, Amalia, the discarnate medium, and he says, "What do you want from me? I do not allow such a behavior, especially because you are of no interest to me. We only want her." And this is Malvina. "We don't want her dead because that would be too easy for her. We want her alive and unhappy, crushed by the deformities of the body and hounded by us in mind and heart." This is their strategy. And yes, I said strategy. They have a strategy. They know what's going on. They know what's more effective in terms to bring more results to their plan, right? So they are very strategic. And it's not something that we're using fancy words. No, there is a strategy behind the negative minds as well. And then our brother Gracindo comes and says the following: "We treat you," look, he's including this brother who is in despair, to be treated as well. "According to the current circumstances, we have followed your vindictive technique and were waiting for the opportunity that presented itself today to demonstrate that yours, as well as that of your friends, is only the force of brutality. While you persecute her, intoxicating her with your poisonous emanations, the victim rises to God and teaches us resignation and courage in her struggles. The spirit mentors who guide her in her physical journey often ask for the permission to keep you and your friends connected to her, because she easily detects and is able to keep the attachment, which in turn frees other leaders and servants of the good and the spirit movement's front line, allowing work to proceed without disruption." Yes, Malvina asks these minds to be connected with her, to stay connected with her, so other individuals in the spirit arena, in the areas that she's applying goodness, to continue to work. Because better with her than with others. Perhaps if others were being attacked by these minds, they wouldn't bear the weight, but she asked them to do so. And this is Gracindo explaining to the obsessor. And then the obsessor says again: "Before we worked for her degrading death, I was an illusion. I was under the illusion, however, because in that way she would come back to this group as soon as she freed herself from matter. Our superiors then decided towards the weakening of her physical health, which exhausts her and tires her co-workers, as they always see her sick. Fortunately for us, although there is much talk about mediumship, spirit, obsession, and so forth, very little is known about its mechanism." Once more, folks, the strategy is to weaken her, her energies, or her stay in the physical body, so that they can not only affect her or not allow her to do as much as she would be able to if she wasn't sick, but also to create commotion among those individuals who are with her. So you can only imagine, being a good medium, being a good person. How many people would go to the Spiritist center where she was working and saying, "Is this person really sick? Is this something, or is this person, as we said before, in need of attention?" Right? So all of this is really interesting to think about it, right? To really take a step back and say, have I done such a thing? Or am I going through such a thing, right? Where sometimes I feel that people don't value my necessity as much, right? As it should be valued. But there is more. It doesn't stop here. As I say, it's a lot of information that we like to bring and as an alert for us to live better. But as we always said, please go read the book. Please, study these elements, because it's so important to our lives, to our being as well. Gracindo then continues. Look, he says, attunement between the two sides of life must happen, right? We gotta have this connection with the other side, whether we like it or not, whether the other side likes it or not, right? In order for us to bring balance between us. Sister Malvina suffers so that others can do their work. Since it is very difficult to disturb her directly, you use others to embarrass her as well. There's also this aspect where other people are embarrassing her with her comments, with their comments and whatnot, and it's very difficult for her to continue to do more because of this as well. She endures loneliness through redemptive work and has remained single, withstanding desires and frustration. Ha! Here's one point that we need to talk about it that we haven't talked about yet. Remember what happened to her, right? She was actually in a position where she saw her husband, the Duke, right, being killed, right? Since that moment, she has not connected with another person. We're going to talk more about it. I'm just going to give you a highlight here. And do you think that necessity is gone? That necessity does not harbor her heart and her mind? It does. She's a human being just like you and I, and she has her needs, right? And this is being transformed into higher work thus far, but she also thinks about it. She still thinks about it. That's when we once more have to be tolerant with ourselves, and we have to be tolerant with others as well. And it is in these moments of doubt, of perhaps when this feeling comes to mind into our hearts, that sometimes we fall in a prey of other conditions. After Gersindo makes these comments, right? The obsessing spirit says the following: she has already had occasion to identify affections and kindred souls with whom, in the past, she maintained passion liaisons. She was about to fall, but inspired by her father Francis, she came to terms with her personal loneliness. Now, however, exhausted by the disease, she re-encounters the beloved spirit of the Duke, her former husband, and dreams of something impossible, receiving his love. It would be a gift of happiness, but he exploiting his love, exploiting her love, his love. Excuse me. It would be. Oh, excuse me. I typed it again. Sorry about that. It would be a gift of happiness, but he exploiting the situation after a youth of dissipation, of dissolute and banal sex, is now happily married. She suffers, and the cynic who somehow identifies her from the past encourages her without words and then disdain her publicly, receiving and giving caresses to other women in her presence, provoked by us as by his own way of being. So this Duke, somehow, based on this, is reincarnated where she is too. And they have connected. She doesn't know it's the Duke. He doesn't know that it's her, but because of his way of treating uh, uh, um, um, affection, to not to go into other things, um, he also connect with these minds to make her suffer, right? It's like, wow, I really admire this man, right? Or I really admire this woman, right? And then we have this feeling towards this person that could be a beautiful thing, but the other person, the affection that the other person can give us, or perhaps that we can give the other person, is not the right affection. All that he's connected to it is to this banal sex that he is actually looking for. And because of it, he is being the instrument of the obsessor, as we can see. Look how connected all of these things are, right? And it's mind-blowing. The obsessor says the following: we use obscene stimulation to disconnect her from the work. He says this is something that he actually says that we brought. Repressed sex is perverse, leads to discouragement and lack of human goals, feeding the physical and emotional loneliness that consumes humanity. Nothing wrong here if you think about it. It's our level of how evolved we are towards sex, and how we evolve yet towards compassion towards others, right? Or not compassion, excuse me, affection towards others. We connect her imbalance with negative emanations, making her physical condition worse. So for those of us who have have some weak points in our lives, in our physical bodies, guess what? that can be potentiated by the negative minds if they don't want us to, they don't want to see us well, or in case we are connected to higher works. Leo, does it, so if I'm going to be a good person, then am I going to suffer physically? No, it doesn't work that way, not necessarily that way. In her case is just an illustration of what we can go through to one level or another, but it's to alert us that our minds have to be, and we're going to finalize with this as well, our minds have to be settled in the right conditions, if you will. Others around her notice her debilitating state and question why she's always sick, believing that she's exaggerating. We already mentioned this. We thrive in this in to inspire disbelief, wariness, and animosity in her life. This is their aim. This is what they're doing to this person, right? And then Gracindo once more comes around and say, okay, but why Malvina? Why her? What is going on? Why? What kind of connection do you have? Because people, these minds are not connected with us for no reason. It's not like you're walking on the street and somebody just decides to bump on us, right? People don't knock on our door asking for the money that we did not owe them. It's quite the opposite. They come after us, or we establish our connections were pre-established before, right? The contracts of life have been put into place, right, in the past, right? And here, this is what the Spirit actually explains to us in terms of what is the connection between them. After a compassionate consideration towards Malvina and the obsessing spirit, Garcindo asked as if there was a personal reason on his part to have connected with the Avengers, as otherwise he would not participate in a battle that was not his, right? And then this is him referring to the obsessor. And the obsessor says the following: look at this. This wretch was in Corinth in 1571. Going back to 1571 now, during the Battle of Lepanto, I then belonged to a Ottoman empire and was summoned because our goal was to conquer the islands of Cyprus. Personally, I lived in the city of Patras in southwestern Greece, and after the battle, I became a slave on this loathsome creature, under this loathsome creature, who then a Catholic mistreated me until I collapsed with exhaustion. Pope Pius V was then in power, the Pope who won the battle thanks to John of Austria on that terrible day of October 7th, 1571. The slaughter was horrendous on both sides, with the Gulf waters turning red like never before. More than 15,000 Ottomans and approximately 9,000 Christians lost their lives in that battle, famous for its cruelty and mercilessness, right? And go back here. And this is how this spirit is connected with Malvina. All the way back, counting all the way back to 1571. We're not here to judge, but to at least see that there is a connection. God did not put this person in front of Malvina to say, now you're going to suffer. God did not create this. This is something that was pre-established, unfortunately, by her free will, then not knowing any better, that by doing this, it would cause her much suffering in the future, right? Thank God there are also opportunities, as we have said here, right? Now, this is what we find what happens in the scene, and I bring this in red because we're going to go back to it purposely, because Manuel de Miranda wants more explanation about this. So we're not going to dive into it. We're just going to read it, kind of give some highlights, but we're going to dive more into it by Spinelli actually explaining later on chapter 6. We notice then, after as they start praying, as they start connecting with the spirit, that Spinelli is actually the head of this group of good spirits that are being conducted in the spirit realm, working with the Manuel de Miranda, Mr. Miranda, and many others. Approaching Malvina, the incarnate medium accompany us. as she subsequently begun to exteriorize through her nose and parted lips a high amount of ectoplasm, which extended towards Amalia, the discarnate medium, enveloping her face. After a few minutes into a metamorphosis, the communicating spirit acquired a lupine form, drooling and making terrible sounds. Putrid odors of corpses invaded the room, and we saw several spirits rise in a spiteful state of decay, as if we were in a cemetery and they were leaving the darkness of their tombs, comprising a macabre horde of evil beings under the command of the communicating entity who shouted words incomprehensible to us, but seemingly meant for them to attack us. So, not only one spirit, as you can see, it was a battle. Many spirit here comes, and really goes against what she's doing. But remember, she was under the banner of Christianity. Thus, the connection with Christianity, thus the connection with all of us. Thus, and we can keep going on and on and on. The psychosphere of planet Earth right now. What is happening? The crazy that is happening right now. It is all of this work that is going against Christianity. And when I say Christianity, all the goodness that has been proposed by Jesus towards us. But in the past, we were using Christianity, though I would like to say the word, because that's not what Christianity really is. We're in the name of Christ taking lives, right? We're taking property of others. We're taking energy. If we didn't take the property or life directly, we took energy of other people, right? So all of this, in a way, needs to be repaid, needs to be rehabilitated, right? And that really is the opportunity that we're having right now to do the right thing, despite the difficulties that we're facing. And I say this with my heart really drenched in sorrow in a way, because perhaps we're part of it. Perhaps I am, also too part of it. And here we are learning or relearning, revisiting these things so we can project ourselves in a better position in the future as well. Not to say, oh, these individuals, they need to be relegated someplace in the universe. No, we need to be inclusive, but we need to be direct, because otherwise they can create more mess than we would be able to help them. Because here we see also that Euripides Barçanufo, as the condition starts to escalate, comes to the room and rescue these minds. And Euripides Barçanufo is actually one of the workers that is also present here, but also was present on the dawn of the new era, for those who follow or have read the book, as well as study the sessions with us. He was born in Sacramento, state of Minas Gerais, in Brazil, from May 1st, 1880 to 1918. He also founded the Allan Kardec school in 1907. He was a great medium who helped a number of needed brothers and sisters physically and spiritually, and continues to do so in the physical and the spiritual realm, right? Working with many spiritist centers in Brazil, and I dare to say here in the United States and the rest of the world too. And he turns to the spirit and says the following: like all of us, explains Euripides Barçanufo, you are a child of God who never abandoned of us, having sent Jesus to gently lead us back to his flock. Jesus is always love and mercy. He understands the weakness of human clay in the cycle of reincarnations, wrapped in pride and fully responsible for our moral weaknesses. Be of good courage and make up for lost time, starting now in this sanctuary built in his name, restarting the evolutionary process interrupted by hatred and your nefarious desire for revenge. Then we saw Filomeno de Miranda mentions that they saw a venerable spirit reminding a earthly rabbi entering the room, seemingly to heed to Euripides' mental directive. He stretched out his arms towards the disturbed communication entity and disconnecting it from the medium, led into a synagogue in the spirit world where it would restart its path of redemption. So you see that the work is not only for Malvina, the work is also made, put into place to rescue this mind. Not only this mind, this obsessor, but the group of obsessors that was with him, because he wasn't working by himself. Remember, he is being brought to understand here as if they were working under a legion. We then move on to chapter 6, right? The work continues, and they explain a little bit more about what happens in with Malvina as well. After she receives the passage, she feels better and whatnot. That doesn't mean that her life is going to change overnight, because more work needs to be done. But we then engage on chapter 6, because chapter 6 will also explain that red part the red text that I put in there, because what happened there was very peculiar, right? It not only calls our attention, but also for sure called the attention of Manuel Filomeno de Miranda. They actually present themselves. He starts by saying that they were working in a hospital. We were scheduled to visit a public hospital prepared for patients stricken by the new coronavirus. The ICU area had been properly prepared and equipped with ventilators. As we have said on chapter 4, 3, 2, 1, this work was really meant to work or to help individuals in the pandemic, right? A painful expectation could be felt in the air. The worries in separating those contaminated by the virus from other patients had created an atmosphere of unjustified fears. Fears here, guys, is one of the key words that we really need to pay attention to. Doctors and nurses as well remain cautious and on alert not to be infected, right? Imagine, we're going back again to the beginning of the pandemic, not knowing much as we know now, and not having the vaccines that we have now, the preparation that we have now, right? The activity was impressive, both from the incarnate and the discarnate realms. Again, showing us that on the other side, they're working for us as well. This is in the again showing what's happening not only in the assistance side, but also family individuals in the hospitals, right? On both realms of life. Parents, family members, and other distressed spirits flocked from the spirit world to visit relatives under the suspicion of infection, waiting for their test results. On the same way, this discarnated, distraught, the spirits anxiously looked for their loved ones without realizing their own current state. Yes, other spirits discarnated already, looking for their loved ones, not knowing that they were actually in the spirit realm. Along with those, we could also see spirits in regrettable processes of spirit obsessions, vampirizing energy of the incarnate. So they're there just pretty much having fun on others' expense, right? During that moment that they were explaining this, there was a test being done out of 13 tests were sent to lab, right, to a lab, and 8 of those 13 tests conducted at the hospital that when they were there working came back positive, forcing the separation of the infected patients, right? So he explains that this whole commotion starts happening because they had to separate these individuals, and Manuel Filomeno de Miranda kind of explains to us the state of mind of these individuals that they're being separated, or that their tests came back positive. A woman of around 30 became very agitated, declaring that she would die because of her advanced diabetes. A doctor approached her and very calmly explained that she was being treated in time, that due to her young age, her body would resist and overcome the infection. Then a very interesting case where he brings and says, a male patient, approximately 50 years old, caught my particular attention, concentrated in deep prayer. Look how he was, in deep prayer. He surrendered himself to the divine providence, immediately attracting a venerable spirit that enveloped him in vibrations of peace and courage. One was negative, the other one, a much better condition in terms of how he connected. And he said, look, I need to pray at this moment. I need to stop and regroup myself, and connect with higher minds. All the other wallowed in tears and complaints, accusing the government, deeming it negligent and thus transferring the responsibility for being in that situation. They claim that official authorities already knew of the pandemic and its killing clause, and furthermore, that instead of protecting the people from crowding together and avoid easy contagion, they had promoted instead the pleasures of carnival, and for that reason they ended up there, victims of the harmful merriment. They remained obvi- obvi- oblivious, however, to the fact that it came down to individual responsibility, that the danger of contagion of an illness of that nature was well known before the week of Carnival. Remember when I say the timeline that I was kind of giving towards the end of February, beginning of March? That's exactly the reason why I said such a thing. Because if we're taking consideration that this was being examined then, or this reporting it brings to is being brought to us, it's because it was right at the beginning of give it or take beginning of March, mid March or so after Carnival, which usually happens at the end of February, right? That's why we brought this here. But that was actually at the time as well that things were happening in 2020, that people knew of of what was going on around the world, right? Italy at that time had a high contagious rate, obviously. China as well, and other places in the world, in Europe as well. Spain and other countries in Europe were, the issue was much worse than it was already in Brazil. But that's why we kind of give this timeline for us to work with it as well. Does it matter? In a way, it's nice to know. It's nice to connect, to kind of bring these numbers to our mind. But the message here is that instead of people seeing, okay, yes, I mean, the government can say A, B, or C, but I should be prudent enough that I need to protect myself. I'm not going to go into a crowded place where I can contract this thing, right? But in turn, they are transferring the responsibility to officials, political officials, to say, look, they should have said something. Well, if they did, would we follow anyways, right? So we need to kind of be a little bit more connected with reason in a way. And again, we're not judging; we're just processing things here. Regrettably, however, contemptible pleasures still deserve more attention than austere duties, along with the unfortunate approach of many Latin Americas that nothing can catch them, as if they were made of special material. So, again, responsibility, responsibility, responsibility towards ourselves and towards others as well, that unfortunately we did not see throughout the pandemic. Let's say 100%. We saw some people were very careful, some people were over careful, and it's okay. We take things whichever way. But it's important for us to not transfer responsibility onto others. Remember the red text that I brought? Here it is again. The Manuel de Miranda explains that when he had that one moment that he wanted to go ahead and touch back on what happened on the mediumistic meeting, right? On how the spirit starts showing himself as a wolf, right? And all these other spirits coming out of the of tombs, right? And that really shook him, and he wanted to understand what was happening. And here's the explanation, folks. And I think this is extremely important for us. There is a little text here for us to read. I'll try to be as brief as I can. But this is one of the highlights of these two chapters, because how we connect with our environment is key for us to live a better life. How we think, how we process what we are thinking, it's extremely important. Thought is everything in the universe. Spinelli then explains that you must recall, dear Philomena, that the psychosphere at that meeting had changed significantly from the way it was at the time of the activity, at the beginning of the activity. Excuse me. When these unfortunate brothers appeared, they brought with them the memories of the places they lived in, their fixed thoughts materializing in the premises, the Dantesque landscape that surrounds them. The strength of the mind, accustomed to certain circumstances and events, gives them life as it recalls and relives them. These spirits connected to each other for the same crimes, and misdeeds, as well as the same painful atonements, create through ideoplasties the scenes and the situations that are familiar to them, all created by the mind, individually and most importantly, collectively. They create that environment. They make it as a concrete. The ideoplasties that he's talking about here is taking the environment, the universal cosmic fluid, and by repetitive thought, constructing and making more concrete as possible, right? And the transformation, Filomeno de Miranda asks, and the transformation phenomenon in which the communicating spirit acquire a lupine aspect, how would you explain it? Our unfortunate brother degenerated his perispirit to such an extent during his years of inflicting all horror that he started to feel like a wolf, driven by the weakness of his acts. In his mind, however, he keeps the memory of his previous human form, which he uses as a convenient mask, while boasting and looking for false arguments to hide his real feeling. He was able to keep that appearance. However, once he started to show how he really feels, his innermost state, the human form, become diluted by the innermost state. The human form becomes diluted. Excuse me. Again, I repeated here. The human form became diluted by the inner force of his vampirism, and he started to revert it. Excuse me. Sorry about that. The repetition there. To give a continuation, and we'll try to go through this as quick as we can, but we want to make a point on how the thought is important to all of us. At this moment, he maintains the deformity, which will modify as he continues to communicate in mediumistic meetings, and his perispirit regains its human form through sincere repentance and inner renewal. So you see that as he's brought to mediumistic meetings to connect with the physical, to a physical reality, he's going to change back again to his original form, to his human form. He still thinks that he looks like he was in the past, or what he was in the past, but his expression, the way he presents himself, is just like a wolf. It's just like an animal, a being, right? The long process of building hatred, with all its elements of revenge, condense the emitted spiritual fluids, creating the terrible forms that inspire terror. It is only through real emotional and mental change that these shocking constructions can be dissolved, right? So again, he has done this for such a long time, repetitively, that he has constructed this condition for himself. After last night's mediumistic communication, he observed new spiritual fluids, prompting diverse thought forms to emerge from his deep unconscious, reconstructing the human reality that characterizes his last earthly existence. Under any consideration, thought is always the source and center of the being's construction. This is the reason our Master Jesus always recommended temperance and perseverance in the good, so as to allow the connections with the divine transcendence to provide the continuation of order and peace. And our thoughts, depending on the mental intensity of the idea, acquire form and life. Countless mental constructions multiply everywhere, generating thought forms and even creating specific regions in the lower zones of the spirit world, as well as its regions of beauty. We live in a world of energy that takes shape according to mental waves, giving rise to transitory forms that time crystallizes, and as such they become material. Let us take, for example, the case of a real presence here. This is really interesting. In this room, we are where we are, not detected by the incarnates, and yet realize without any impediments what is taking place. We are invisible, but also tangible, because we have atomic weight and distinctive volume. Thanks to the perispirit that shapes our appearance, we can see what is currently happening here, and with a little concentration, everything that has occurred in the past, in this space before, as it remains embedded in the different layers of waves and vibrations. So we are part of this vibration. We are part of this environment in which we live in. And we're not alone. There are certain things that we can see, right? As also in this case here, even certain spirits cannot see them, right? Of lower orders, but they are tangible. They have, as he says here, they have atomic weight and distinctive volume based on their perispirit. And so are we when we are also disconnected from our physical bodies, right? So it's important, folks, for us to change our perception towards the universe, towards our true reality. This physical body is beautiful. What we see, what we connect is also beautiful. Matter is amazing, if we can say. It really excites us, and we excite matter too, right? We make it move. We make it. We give our taste. We change its form, its shape, everything, right? We give quality to it. Our capabilities are just immense, but our true reality is not of this world, right? And that is one of the most important things. I'm checking on my time here. I do have couple more slides that we go through, and then we can go into the comments and questions. What happens after this is really interesting because they go back to the hospital where or the not the they're still in the hospital, but in the condition that where they are together to help with individuals with COVID, right? And they see their attention is called to a lady who's actually going through a trance, right? A mediumistic trance. And what's happening? Remember that there are let's say vampirizing entities there too, trying to usurp the energy of some of these individuals who are in despair. Not those who are praying, not those who are analyzing the situation as an opportunity or a condition to redeem themselves, but they're in despair, right? And there is also a case of a gentleman who is suffering quite a bit because of the debilitating lungs that he had because of tobacco. And then Spinelli comes and explains to us this tragedy. What a tragedy that a tobacco addiction. Our brother here is considered an indirect suicide for exposing his organism to the harm of the chemical substance found in cigarettes. They destroy the lungs' delicate alveoli, preventing them from carrying out their vital functions. Our poor friend will wake up to a real nightmare due to his ignorance of the phenomena of death that has just occurred. These types of indirect suicides are massive all over the world because everything that threatens health, well being, and balance of physical function is an aggression that ends up ruining the body. It is also worth mentioning that addictions, as well as other bodily harms that comprise health, impregnate the perispirit with destructive miasmas, allowing from the installation of many diseases or through somatization giving rise to illness that were not part of the being's evolutionary chart. Here's the thing, guys, that I really I read a million times because it's just amazing. Likewise, pernicious mental habits, vulgar and toxic conversations. The cultivation of negative thoughts generate vibrios and psychic bacteria that decrease the elements of balance and human resistance, enabling the onset of many illness and emotional disorders. It is essential that the sources of thought be watched to prevent the streaming of these destructive elements, responsible for countless evils that disturb those who harbor them. Everything is in the mind, everything is how we conduct ourselves towards the issues that we're facing in life, whether from the past, from the present, and how we project ourselves in the future as well. So, after this conversation that he's having with Manuel de Miranda, they do an analysis on the Templars, right? On how they were helping, how they were connecting with others as well in that area. Or I believe it was on chapter 5 that it does merit an analysis. And this is something that I would like to promise to you in the future for us to bring it over here. What are these minds? Because we also saw the Templars as well helping in the dawn of the new area. I don't want to put them aside and say we're not going to give emphasis to it, but hopefully in the future we have more time to talk a little bit more. But going back to this message, it's important for us to, number one, stop, study, connect with one another about it. Call me up, connect with us at the SSB so we can dive into these studies, because it's not just a book for us to stop and read, a couple pages and that's it, right? Or read the whole book and that's it. No, it needs to be studied. This is a an infusion of energy that is being given on us, or at least an attempt, so that we can change our lives, so that we can change the way at least we perceive ourselves and we perceive one another, right? Much like the case of Malvina, what a hard worker she was, what a true good soul that she is, here on planet Earth with us, whether in the physical body or whether discarnated. We know this because the obsessor even said himself, if she discarnates, she's going to come back to this work anyways. So might as well just keep her here and kind of slow her down and slow other people down. But these people are very, hardworking individuals, in every sense of the word, right? And sometimes we don't pay attention to these amazing, valuable elements and resources that we have around us. So I hope that I got you excited to go back tonight or tomorrow, whenever, and read these 2 chapters, read the previous chapters, and keep reading on, so that when we can meet again, we can actually connect and ask questions, or debate a little bit more, and you can actually connect with me as we're presenting this, so we can bring the most important parts of it. Sometimes, that I think is the important part. But this has been session 3 of this amazing presentation on the way to a world of regeneration. And the next, Daniel, the next, we'll just bring it real quick, Daniel. Thank you. The next 2 chapters that we'll cover will be Momentous Encounter and On the Battlefield, chapter 7 and 8. That's going to happen in April. On that note, I'll pass the word to you, Kirsten. Questions and comments. What do we have?
Wow. That's the comment that I have. Can we just take a minute to absorb this chapter, or these chapters, because there is so much information that I feel like I don't know about those that are watching. For those of you who have already read the chapters, or even if you're rereading the chapter and you're hearing, Leo presents it again, it is mind blowing information. Like, wow, I'm sorry, I'm speechless.
Yes.
Wow, Dr. Miranda has left me speechless. I just had to stop for a moment and give space for that, to say
Can I
that.
make a comment on that though?
Please.
Sometimes I do feel that if we take a minute too long, we don't do anything, because we're like frozen, like deer on the headlights, right? It's like we don't do anything. So reading this and putting it together, it's like, bring this part, bring that part. How can we construct on this? How can we act on this as well? And I think, to me, I was talking to Isabella. It's like reading this book. It's like last night when finally I kind of tweaked a little bit the things that I wanted to say. I told her, and this is like an inside story, folks. Forgive me. I wanted to go to the gym. I wanted to go for a run because I had so much energy with me that I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this coming from? And it has to be, obviously, from the higher minds that I perceived as physical energy, right? But it's amazing, yes. But to say the least, I mean, sometimes I think if we wait too long, we don't act because we're like, okay. But I get what you're saying. Yes, we have to digest. We have to take time, right? Because it's a lot of information.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that this isn't typical of what we do here at the SSB. We normally go to our comment section, we read our questions. I just, we felt that this merited a moment to just breathe and take this in, because it's a call to self-responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
of personal responsibility for each
Very
one of
much so.
us. really, really, it's a true call and reminder of the personal responsibility that each one of us has day to day, every day, from moment to moment. And it can be so easily forgotten, Leo. It can be so easily forgotten because we get wrapped up in our day and we go about our business, and we can really forget about those things. But let me take a step back and not be selfish to all those who have commented and shared questions. Um, of course, we had all the good. Well, of course, that's us saying good evening. We had some friends visiting us. Yes, Miss Elsa Hossie from London. I was gonna say Europe, but London, same thing. So I
Welcome.
yes, hello to everyone that has been watching. I don't want to show my question first. I do actually do want to share that Yasko asked a question. Let's jump to her first. She says, "Hi, dear Leo. Chapter 5, very honorable dysfunction of Malvina, while she kept the obsessors attached to her despite great suffering, even physical illness. She frees the field for rescuing work by the rest of the spiritual team. So is her mediumship a mission or an expiation or both?" Hmm.
Very good question. Yes, Leo personally like to say it's both, and I say this that because number one, Manuel de Miranda does not give any insight of it is a mission or an expiation. There's one point that I didn't bring here. Then I didn't. Malvina was also a part of the Saint Clair of
Mm.
Assisi. One of her, let's say, her students at that time, right?
Hmm.
So that's why she received so much help from them as well, right?
Oh, okay, yeah. Mhm.
So she had before the ordeal of killing herself and all of that, she had some structure, let's say, okay? So it's important to say here that she is being helped to work. Now, if that is a mission or not, that is up to her. Because Yasko, if we think about it, if I go to you and say, Yasko, I'm gonna go ahead and deliver you, let's say, a gallon of milk, right? Until that happens, I haven't, you know, delivered on my promise. So can I say that that was a mission based on the lack of, based on the result or the lack of results, right? So it again, just for us to think about this here, because sometimes I when I go through this, and I also want to, I dare to say, and please forgive me if I'm saying this wrong here, and I would love to get more comments on this, because if spirituality came with a plan B for spiritism, we also have to take in consideration our free will. And I say this because they had a plan B for Kardec, right? We know this. It's there. It's literally explained to us that spirituality, in terms of strategy, they have plan B, C, D, and whatever until love has conquered the world, right? So with that in mind, can we say that this is a mission? Maybe not. She's been doing well. She's been receiving the help. The obsessor actually said that Saint Francis of Assisi, and he refers to Father Assisi, to Saint Francis of Assisi, saying he comes and helps her to liberate her mind of the physical needs that she has, right? And thus she continues with her so-called mission. There we can call mission, because thus far she's been doing well. Now, I gotta tell you, she's been doing much better than than I am in terms of my quote unquote contracts that I have established in the past, right? So on that note, she's being very successful, but it is a mission. I like to say both. I like to give the benefit of the doubt that it could be a mission, but it is an opportunity for her to redeem herself of what she has done, towards those other minds and hearts there. I hope that helps. And I would love to see, people giving their comments on it as well.
Yeah, so Paula makes a comment on that, Leo, what you just said. And she says, Malvina's choice to stay attached to the obsessors seems like the sacrificial union in relationships, thus indicating a more evolved spirit on a soul mission. That was just Paula's
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah, and it could be, right? I mean, I agree again. I mean, she's doing, like I said, I mean, I got to take my hat off. I mean, she's doing amazing. To ask our mentors to say, please let these minds stay connected with me because I want Daniel, Kirsten, and everybody else to do a better job. My God, that is like I cannot even really put myself to think of it, such a thing. For those of us who have seen, who have connected with these difficult minds that are harboring our lives every day, it's very hard to think of such a thing, right? And not to feel indignated, to feel right. So much prayer for all of us who are in this position, who is in need to work in this productive arena with Jesus.
Wow. Let's go ahead and go on to the next question. And this comes from Paula. She says, do the political leaders who did not have the proper perspective of the pandemic, as well as the frivolous people, incur a spiritual debt that will need to be ameliorated?
No doubts about it, right? No doubts. I mean, it you know these minds, they will have to connect with the deplorable states that were presented to other people, right? Condition resources that were not well distributed, right? um, uh, Much like we have seen here on how information was disseminated, right? Was it to create awareness, or was it to create fear, right? Was it to maintain people under their umbrella of necessities, that okay, if I create fear, this person will be dependable on me in the future as well, right? So all of this will need to come to terms with the higher mind, with God, because it's not God what God wants for us. It's not what we are here for, right? Whether this was a mistake or not in terms of the actual virus, the creation of the virus or not, there were many consequences, and within these consequences, there were other situations that were created to benefit a few and to really hurt many people. Um, I like to consider unconsciously, because they do not know what they did, and a lot of people, they do not know what they're doing. And we can take this for what happened to our Master Jesus when he says that, because if they did know, they wouldn't be doing. If Malvina, and I'll take her example again, knew the consequences, her current life, right? Because I believe she's probably still in the physical body. I don't know. I did not look for. If she knew what she would go through 500 years later, she would not have done what she did in 1571. Much like these individuals today, if they know what is to happen to them, not, and I'm just not saying this, in a judging way, but it's consequences, right? Consequences of our actions. They would not have done it, and they would have act much more positively than they would have done than what they did. So I hope that helps.
Sorry, Lee, I'm reveling in all this. We have quite a number of questions that have come through, so I really would like to try to get to all of them. So I'm not going to make too many comments in between. So I'm going to jump ahead to Paula's follow-up question. She said, "Are the terrible forms due to long-standing revenge also show up in our nightmares?" I think this might have been referring to part of the text you were talking about.
Yes, when I believe the spirits coming out of their tomb and everything. Yes, I mean, remember, the spirit actually said that they incite forms, they incite um, uh, visions or recollection of things. Who knows, right? And yes, it is. I would like to help everyone, and this is something that throughout some time I had some issues as well. For those who are connected with me a little bit. In a more directed and day-to-day basis, they know that I went through some difficult moments in terms of dreams and nightmares, especially growing up. And we don't know about this, and I say this with a good heart now, trying to help others as well. Um, that the, what we call nightmares, these visions, these ideas that comes to mind as, tough moments, can be a recollection of the past, but also incited thought forms that are incited by obsessing spirits, right? Much like when we sleep, we are connected to these minds, and we see these things, we see these moments. If you see it, if you dream of it, and one of the things that we need to do is, how do you feel towards it? Because I also have felt in the past that I was in very difficult moments, is sleeping, what we would call a nightmare, but I didn't feel anything. Quite the opposite. I felt compelled to help. So sometimes what we see and we think it's a nightmare. No, sometimes you're being taken to that location to help, to guide, right? Perhaps whether that is connected to you or not, you're there to be a worker of Christ. How can you do that? Pray. When you're in the dream, before you go to bed, you got to really prepare yourself. And if it happens in the dream, you got to tell yourself, now it's moment to pray. And you start praying. Believe me, it has happened to me. It doesn't happen all the time, folks, because I do also get a wake up a little bit upset about all of our dreams. And that feeling when we wake up tells everything. Because if we weren't feeling upset, then it's not really for us to worry about it, right? But when we wake up and we feel distraught, it's like, wait a minute, what happened? More prayer, more good work, more of good deeds in our lives, so that we are helped disconnect with these minds. Again, much like Malvina, much like the politicians of the present right now, we did some things in the past that were not according to the natural laws. So we need to also redeem ourselves. And the best redemption is to be of a good nature and practice charity, as Spiritism brings to us.
Oh, for sure, Leo, 100%. We're going to go on to our next question from Yasko, and she's referring to chapter 6 here. Blaming the public health care officials or others for allowance or lack of more restrictive measures in times of plenty of information and knowledge may place a much greater responsibility in one's precocious death, right? Will it be considered a passive suicide?
Yasko, great question and great reminder on both ways. However, what Joanna de Angelis tells us, be tolerant. You bring a very good point, which is the times of plenty of information and knowledge. That's for you and I. That's for a very selective group of people. The a good majority of the planet nowadays, where do they get their information from? YouTube, Facebook. I'm not banishing these social platforms or whatever, but people don't sit down and read what a virus is. People don't sit down and read how we can decontaminate ourselves, or help not contaminate ourselves, or whatever you want to call it. The information is not for everybody, right? We're vibrating in different levels. I get what you're saying, but at the same time, we have to be tolerant with them. Now, on the other side, yes, because of, for those who are responsible enough or have some level of understanding, and they choose to go to one extreme or the other, there will be a consequence to it, right? For those who don't have it, and they took the irresponsible way of partying and going to carnival, or doing, for lack of better words, participating on, a lot of people were joking about a COVID party. Guess what? There is a consequence to it. And it's in a way indirect suicide, as Spinelli actually mentioned to us on how we conduct ourselves. But great question. But let us also disseminate goodness where it needs to be disseminated. But the great majority of us, unfortunately, I'll give you an example. You go to the street nowadays and you still see masks on the floor, right? That's, people are still trashing things. And this is here in the United States of America. So there are a lot to be learned. There are a lot to be, when I say learned, is like bringing to heart, right? To exemplify it. So, but thank you for your question.
And then we have a very aligned, I should say, in some way. Question from Paula, and she says, "Why is suicide a more grave problem than passive suicide through addictions and self-neglect? Is it a matter of the degree of self-hatred and lack of trust and faith in God?"
Why is a suicide a more grave problem than passive suicide? I don't know. If it is one or the other. I would take in consideration here, Paula, and I need to study on this a little bit more. But I would take in consideration here the intention, right? And sometimes the intention is not like Paula, Yasko just said. Look, you getting it wrong. You have so much information. Somebody coming to us and telling us you're destroying yourself. Um, what is the passive can be very detrimental as well, because you see life being taken from you, or you are utilizing your resources in such a negative way that become very destructive over time. And time is of essence here too, right? The longer you you keep yourself in that mentality or ideal, the longer probably will take for you to come out of it. Let's use the example of the spirit, the obsessing spirit. He's going to need several mediumistic meetings to go back to quote unquote human state again. Even though he thinks he's still showing himself that way, he's not. So it's going to take time for him to go back to a quote unquote once more human state where his perispirit is of a form of a human being, right? So when we put time into the destructive ideals of life, sometimes it may take twice as much. Sometimes it takes 3 times as much, as long, not as much, as long as the time that we spent doing crazy things in our lives, right? We can see this, for example, when we eat too much and we gain weight. Um, Look, it takes 6 months for you to eating junk food, but it will take probably 2 years for you to go back to where you were before, where you want to be, or perhaps where you should be. So we all go through these things in our lives, and it's important for us to analyze this. But great question, and I think it's really up to us to analyze them and lead a better life. Thank you.
100%. Wow, Leah. I mean, it gives us so much to think about. And I really hope that everyone that's been watching this is taking away the same um, feeling of, I'm lacking, I can't even think of the word, this sense of urgency, for us to do that internal evaluation of ourselves, and really do what we need to do, because it's time is of the essence. But I wanted to allow you this moment, just to any final thoughts, any major highlights to end with for this evening. I mean, I'm sure there's so many things that come to mind, but any one or two things that you wanted to, just sort of to highlight, and let us end with that, and we'll allow, we'll have you do the end prayer as well, and to end our session today.
Yes, I think I have said this before, folks, and I think it's important for us to analyze one thing. We're discussing, the book that was these chapters they were developed during the moment of the pandemic, right? Whether in 2020, 2019, 2021, whatever, doesn't matter. The truth of the matter is, there's help, right? The other side is working and working and working to help all of us to lead a better life, to pay attention to the much knowledge that we have, as Yasko reminded us, right? And what are we doing? What can I do to get better? And this is a question that I want to leave with everybody. What are you doing to, and I'm not pointing fingers here, please, I mean, including myself on this as well. What are we doing in order for us to connect with these minds? It's not just a matter of praying, because praying is the first step. But when a negative thought comes to mind, what do I do? When the feeling of indignation towards my brother or sister comes to mind, what do I do? Right? Do I replace it with something positive? Do I consider time? Do I consider past experiences in order for us to find the root causes of our problem, of the issues that we're seeing right now? On that note, I also like to add that how are we projecting ourselves into the future? What are we really thinking? Tomorrow, next week, next year, 10 years from now? I was talking to a friend this week. It's like, look, I'm, on my mid 40s right now. 20 more years, great. 30 more years, perfect. But it will go like that. And finding ourselves in a more difficult state in the spiritual realm, once we lose our physical body, is not what we're looking for. We're looking for to be completers, to be people that we look back and said, I did at least 50% what I promised. Instead of some of these minds, as Manuel de Miranda reminds us that some of these individuals, they are discarnating at a worse condition, on a worse condition than what they reincarnate. And that is not what we want for one another. We don't want to get to the other side and not be able to find the loved ones, those who are waiting for us to be well when we get to the other side. Confused, perhaps, but at least well. So we wish that you find this peace within you as we try to do our best as well, and hoping that we connect again for the next chapters for the whole book. And please send your questions. Please connect with us whichever way possible, because we're eager to learn from you as well on how your readings and your understanding of the book develops. So thank you. On that note, we ask you, dear Lord, to guide us all in this transformation, in this effort that is being presented towards us from the spirit realm, in the physical realm. Understanding that there are impediments, difficulties that are created by many, many minds connected with us from the past or from the recent present. But we ask, number one, for forgiveness, dear Lord. We ask that you guide us on forgiving others so that we can settle our difficulties and move on into a brighter future, where planet Earth will still remember some difficult moments, not being ashamed, but to utilize as a pillar to construct a better world, saying to one another, no, no, for the difficulties of the past, or not repeating them, and saying yes and yes for goodness, kindness, life in general, for everyone. We thank you for this moment, and so be it.